thing that hurts me the most is that I have to watch the NBA Finals and they have world champion on their head. World champion of what?
Now, only Noah Lyles himself knows what he was thinking in this moment. Was he taking this as a time to elevate the sport of track? Was he genuinely mad that the NBA uses the world champion mantra? Was he perhaps jealous or envious that Adidas prioritized Anthony Edwards, NBA athlete, over Noah Lyles in shoe deal talks? We likely may never know Noah Lyles' true motivation for going up on the podium and talking about the NBA and its world champions claim. But what we do know is that Lyles' offhand and likely facetious comment led to discourse across the world about who is the basketball world champion. And that is my goal of this video, to try to digest all the discourse around this topic and give my opinions on what truly is the world champions of basketball. Now, I think the best way to attack this discourse is by dividing it into two parts, starting off with the club part and a country or international part. Quickly to clarify, I believe that you see a world champion in both sections. There is both a club world champion and an international world champion. But considering Noah Lyles was talking about the NBA calling themselves world champions, I feel like the appropriate place to start would be in the club section. When talking about domestic leagues with domestic clubs or teams, I feel like it's important to preface this part by stating that domestic leagues cannot technically produce world champions without having some sort of centralized competition at the end of the day to compare the top teams from the domestic league and pit them against each other to establish a real world champion. Now, the argument that I'm going to make is that while the NBA cannot be the de jure world champions, I do believe that they can be and are the de facto world champions of club competition. When this discourse first arose, one of the more common comparisons to make was comparing the basketball scene to the international football or soccer scene. Now, in theory, I could see how this would have been an apt comparison, but when you look at where soccer and football is on the international scene and where basketball is on the international scene, the comparison kind of falls apart a bit. For example, when you look at club soccer in Europe, I think it's widely recognized that the English Premier League is the top league in all of Europe. But with that said, you still see other competitive leagues in Europe, such as in Germany, in Italy, and in Spain. You see a great deal of player movement and coach movement within these different leagues as they all kind of race to the top of the international soccer world. It's a rather common occurrence to see different teams from different leagues go into bidding wars for players, which then necessitates a need for a more unifying competition between these top European leagues to decide who the best among them usually is, and we often see a lot of teams from different leagues making it farther, showing the parity of international soccer between leagues. And the aforementioned parity in the club soccer world just simply does not match up to the parity in the club basketball world, as there's really only two leagues at the top of the club basketball world, that being the NBA and the EuroLeague. And these two leagues do not see the same competition as you do in the club soccer world, as these two leagues often find themselves in a more ecosystem relationship. For example, look at Vasilije Micic. Vasilije Micic was the MVP of the EuroLeague in 2021 and enjoyed a 3-year stretch averaging 17 points per game, 5 assists per game, shooting around 46% from the field. Very, very strong numbers in the EuroLeague. Then last offseason, he signed a deal with the Oklahoma City Thunder to come over to the NBA, and his numbers dropped significantly, down from 17 points per game to 7 points per game. He experienced a drop in numbers because the NBA competition was simply that much more difficult than the EuroLeague. And in a very similar situation, the 2023 EuroLeague MVP Sasha Vezenkov went to the NBA for the 2023-24 NBA season and struggled mightily, only 5.4 points per game, only 2.3 rebounds per game, and only 44% from the field, and is actually returning to Europe after his NBA disappointment. And this also proves to be true when you flip it around, as a guy like Kendrick Nunn, who was struggling in his last season in the NBA, averaging only 7.1 points per game with the lowly Wizards, have no offers in that offseason, head over to EuroLeague and become one of its best players overnight, averaging 16 points per game and making all EuroLeague first team in his first EuroLeague season. So as these player examples illustrate, there is a clear ecosystem and hierarchy to the NBA and the EuroLeague's dynamic, with the NBA being at the forefront, constantly filtering in the best in the world. And another way this hierarchy and ecosystem shows itself is when you look at the international competition scene within FIBA. If you take a look at Serbia's 2024 Olympics roster, it had 4 NBA players. On a 12-man roster, that is only 33% of their roster. But when you look at Serbia's scoring throughout the Olympics on their bronze medal run, 57% of their scoring was decided by the 4 NBA players that they brought. And similarly, Germany on their 2023 World Cup Championship run also brought 4 NBA players, comprising of 33% of their roster. but those 4 NBA players ended up doing 54% of the scoring, which is more than half on only 33% of the roster. And another element of the international scene that I believe showcases the NBA's dominance is the all-tournament teams at the end of the FIBA World Cup in 2023 and just these recent 2024 Olympics. At the all-tournament teams, or basically the best 20 players in those 2 competitions, 17 of those have been NBA players, and only 3 have not. Once again, showcasing the hierarchy of the basketball world, with the NBA sitting atop and the EuroLeague being a step below with every other league in the world. And tying this back to the soccer example I gave earlier, when you look at the different soccer leagues, and this applies for multiple sports across the world, they have competing leagues that are going towards the top, racing towards the top of the podium, which necessitates a need for like a Champions League style unifying competition at the top. And as I outlined with all these different examples, player movement, different FIBA competitions, international competitions, the NBA is filtering out the best talent in the world. And there is really just no need to play this unifying Champions League style of competition to prove who is the best league when it is so evident by the other elements of the sport. And like I said earlier, the Boston Celtics as the champions of a domestic league cannot technically be the world champions, but I think it's advantageous as critically thinking humans to simply cut out the middleman, given everything I've outlined before about the NBA's dominance, and simply call them the world champions without so much outrage and uproar amongst the basketball community. I would equate it to being up past midnight, say 12:01, and saying, "Oh man, I have a busy day tomorrow," and somebody correcting you by saying, "Well, technically it already is tomorrow." They very well knew what you meant, but instead of thinking critically, they held on to a technicality, which is what I think we're seeing in this world champions debate. So in my opinion, based on the information that I provided earlier, I would claim that the Boston Celtics were the 2024 de facto club world champions. Then quickly transitioning over to the FIBA and international side, I want to talk about what constitutes the world champion on that side. FIBA and international basketball operate in a 3-tier system. Tier 1 starts off with the local competitions or the continental competitions, with more storied competitions such as Eurobasket and AmeriCup, and growing competitions such as Afrobasket and the Asian Cup. And how a country does in these continental competitions is how they qualify for the Tier 2 of the system, being the FIBA World Cup. And I'm sure you caught on by this point, but how you do in the FIBA World Cup then qualifies you for the Olympics, which is the final tier of the FIBA system, being the most prestigious, and its importance for players and countries often follow that same tier system. And I think the United States showcases the best, which for their Continental Cup, the AmeriCup, they send a team with no NBA players, and then for the World Cup, they send a team with younger up-and-coming NBA players, and then for the Olympics, as we saw this year, they send the Avengers, in quotes, with your NBA superstars, Hall of Famers, and All-Stars. And beyond just the United States, it is well known in the basketball space that the Olympics is the most prestigious of the basketball competitions, and you see a lot of stars like Giannis Antetokounmpo, like Nikola Jokic, like Victor Wembanyama, like Jamal Murray, sit out of the FIBA World Cup, but then play the very next year in the Paris Olympics, as it is just that bit more important. And I think that fact does muddy up the world champion talk for international play more than it did for the club play, whereas in the club play you can kind of beat around the bush and say the NBA is just so far ahead of everyone, it is the de facto world champion. When you play in the World Cup, there is really no other way to describe the world champion of the World Cup as the world champion. So even though the Olympics is more prestigious and maybe more important, the World Cup is the world champion, and there's really no way to go around that. But I would preface it by saying, if you want to put the emphasis on the Olympics being more important, you simply just have to say Olympic champion and understand that that is more important in the context of basketball than being a world champion, at least on the international side. But yeah, that will be the video. I hope I cleared up any world champion confusion. If you've seen any discourse on Twitter or on YouTube or any place you've seen this, maybe just having it with a friend, any discourse like that, I hope I kind of cleared that up, or at least sparked some new conversations, some new ideas going in people's head about what is a world champion in basketball. So yeah, make sure to subscribe. I got a bunch of new stuff coming. I know basketball is technically over with the Olympics being done, but I'm not done. I'm going to be dropping videos about different stuff, revisiting different NBA trades, talking more overseas basketball, just a bunch of stuff. So make sure to subscribe if you like this video. But yeah, that is going to be the video, and I will see you guys next time.